I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Oh, then we have got to part?
I'm afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is waiting at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me in every way to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it.
Oh, no, you see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy, but pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I looked upon you, your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell it to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anybody in the world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Oh, you silly boy! Of course! Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day I bought this little ring in your name, and this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I have never written any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
Oh, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The three you wrote me after I had broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you'd like. Today, I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all, Cecily. I am very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. Oh, I hope your hair curls naturally. Does it?
Oh, yes, darling, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily?
Oh, I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it had been always a girlish dream of mine to love somebody whose name was Earnest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say that you could not love me if I had another name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my dear, sweet, loving, little darling, I really don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name. In fact, it is rather an aristocratic name. Half of the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name were Algie, you couldn't love me.
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes. Dr. Chotable is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important christening. I mean, on a most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since February 14th, and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other for such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Well, that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Well, outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is currently unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me the proper sphere for that man. And certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Not at all, Gwendolen. I am very fond of being looked at.
You are here on short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here.
Oh, really? Your mother, no doubt of some female relative of advanced years, resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, well, it is strange. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that the news inspires new feelings of unmixed delight. I am very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be. I am not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Oh, pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
To speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42, and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less ancient history supplies us with many most painful examples of what I referred to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
But it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I am sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, well, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. That subject seems distasteful for most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load off from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there has been some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I am afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Ah, well, it is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. Oh, I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid that I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolen, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay the tea here as usual, madam?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills, quite close, one can see 5 counties.
Not 5 counties. I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town?
Quite a well-kept garden, this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it just at present. It's almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Detestable girl. I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. cake is rarely seen at the best houses anymore.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
Oh, you have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. And though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceitful in such manners. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! My own Ernest!
Gwendolen, darling!
A moment. May I ask you if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
Oh, to dear little Cecily. Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you, you may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is present around your waist is my dear guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh.
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Oh, good heavens, Gwendolen.
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen. Oh, I mean, to Gwendolen.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John.
Oh,
Has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on us, on the both of us.
my poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolen.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there's just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother, Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother, Ernest. So it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolen. Cecily. It is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I am really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother in my life, and I certainly have not the slightest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Have you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for any young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No. Men are so cowardly, aren't they? Oh.
This ghastly state of things is what you call Bunburying, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I have ever had in my entire life.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
Oh, that is absurd. One has the right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be very serious about Bunburying. What on earth are you serious about? I haven't got the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algy. And a very good thing, too.
Well, your brother is a little off-color, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing, either.
As for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I must say that your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. I'd say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Well, I can say no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen. That is all. I love her.
Well, I wanted to be engaged simply to Cecily. I adore her.
Oh, there is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It is very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble? I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins in, quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
It is perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that is no reason why you should eat them at all in that greedy way.
I wish you would have a tea cake instead. I don't like tea cakes.
Good heavens! I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you've just said it was perfectly harmless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are still the same.
Algy, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does, except, vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 6:15 under the name of Ernest.
Oh, my dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30, and I naturally will take the name of Earnest. Gwendolen would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest. It's absurd. Besides, I have the perfect right to be christened if I like. There is no evidence at all that I ever have been christened by anybody. I should think it extremely profitable Probable I never was, and so does Dr. Choswell. It is entirely different. In your case, you have been christened already.
Yes, but I have not been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you are not quite sure you're ever having been christened, I must say, I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you quite, very unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someday very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off. Oh. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said yourself that a severe chill was not hereditary.
Well, it used it to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
Oh, that is nonsense. You are always talking nonsense.
Oh, Jack, are you at the muffins again? I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served for your guests? What ideas do you have of hospitality?
Algernon, I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
Because I haven't quite finished my tea yet. And there's still 1 muffin left.
And that concludes Act 2. We will be taking a short break and be reconvening at 9:35. So, thank you.
Oh, Gary.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Short break. We'll reconvene at 9:35. Please do not forget, serious note here. Please post drunk selfies, self-drunkies or drunk selfies for a prize. We have a prize to win a pint, of Chattanooga whiskey, which is the best whiskey. So we'll see you here in just a couple of moments.
I don't have any more Fireball.
Thank you. I'll be right there with some more Fireball. Ed, wrap it up.
Oh my God. Where'd everybody go? Scale of 1 to 10, Gary. Scale of 1 to 10.
Like 7, 9.
So it's 79?
I can't do it. I have walked around.